The refusal to speak wasn't passive. It was an active form of emotional siege warfare that lasted generations. It all began with a dispute over a small parcel of land between two brothers, my great-grandfather, Elias, and his younger brother, Samuel. It was a disagreement that, in any other family, might have been resolved over a heated discussion or a reluctant compromise. But in my family, silence was the weapon of choice. Elias, the elder, believed the land was his by right of birth. Samuel argued their father had promised it to him on his deathbed. Instead of talking it out, Elias simply stopped speaking to Samuel. Not just a cold shoulder at family gatherings, but a complete and total severance of communication. If Samuel entered a room, Elias would leave. If his name was mentioned, Elias would fall into a stony, impenetrable silence. This wasn't just a personal feud. It was a declaration of war that forced everyone to choose a side. My great-grandmother, a gentle soul, tried to mediate, but Elias turned his silence on her whenever she broached the subject. Soon the silence spread like a contagion. Elias's children were forbidden from speaking to Samuel's children. Family gatherings, once boisterous and joyful, became tense, segregated affairs, with an invisible wall running down the middle of the room. The silence was a living entity, a suffocating presence that dictated every interaction. Years turned into decades. The original dispute was all but forgotten, but the silence remained, passed down like a cursed heirloom. I grew up knowing I had cousins, an aunt and an uncle who lived just a few miles away, but I'd never spoken to them. We'd see them in town, at the grocery store or the post office, and we'd exchange these awkward, vacant stares, bound by an inherited animosity we didn't even understand. My grandfather, Elias's son, upheld the silence with a grim determination. It was his duty, he believed, to honor his father's will. He never questioned it. He simply obeyed the unwritten law of our family. The family business, a thriving timber company built by the two brothers in their youth, began to suffer. It was jointly owned, a relic of a time before the silence. Decisions required cooperation, but cooperation was impossible. Legal documents were exchanged through impassive lawyers. Opportunities were missed, contracts were lost, and the company that had been the bedrock of our family's prosperity began to crumble. The silence was literally costing us our legacy. It was a slow, painful decay, fueled by nothing more than stubborn pride. I remember asking my father once why we couldn't just talk to them. He looked at me with this profound sadness in his eyes and said, "It's been too long. Nobody even knows how to start." The silence had become its own reason for being. To break it would be to admit that generations of sacrifice and bitterness had been for nothing. It was easier to let the legacy die than to admit the mistake. Samuel's side of the family eventually sold their half of the business for a fraction of its worth, just to be free of the connection. They moved away, and the final thread was cut. My grandfather passed away, taking his silent vow to the grave. My father, burdened by the weight of this hollow tradition, tried to manage what was left of the business, but his heart wasn't in it. It was a monument to a pointless war. I was the one who finally broke the cycle. I found one of my cousins on social media. His name was Jacob. I stared at the send message button for an hour, my hand trembling. What would I even say? "Hi, sorry, my great-grandfather was a jerk to your great-grandfather." It felt absurd, but the alternative, letting this silence continue into another generation, felt even more so. So, I typed a simple message. "Hi Jacob, my name is your name. I think we're cousins. I know there's a lot of history, but I'd like to change that." The reply came almost instantly. "I'd like that too." We met for coffee a week later. It was awkward at first. We were two strangers who should have been family. We talked about the land, the business, the silence. We didn't try to place blame. We just acknowledged the immense pointless tragedy of it all. We discovered we had the same dry sense of humor, the same love for old movies. We found a connection that had been denied to us our entire lives. The family legacy, the business, is gone. It couldn't be saved. It was the price of generations of silence, but in its place something new is growing. Jacob and I are building a new legacy, one based not on land or money, but on forgiveness and communication. We are teaching our own children that a disagreement is just a conversation waiting to happen, that no pride is worth the cost of family, and that silence is never a solution. It's a wound that, left untended, will fester and destroy everything you hold dear. The war is over, not because someone won, but because two people decided that peace was more valuable than being right. This story is a heavy one, but I hope it serves as a reminder for all of us. Communication is the lifeblood of our relationships. If you're holding on to a silence no matter how justified it feels, I urge you to consider the long-term cost. Is it worth it? Thank you so much for listening to my family story. If it resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more content about navigating life's complex relationships. Stay safe and talk to each other.